In this video, we'll talk about another element of teaming across boundaries, namely external roles. So if you've viewed the external activities, external learning, and Teams videos already, you will know that an important part of team effectiveness is how well teams manage their boundaries and how well and effectively they're networked into important external groups, other teams they need to coordinate with, other stakeholders that they need to access resources from or pitch ideas to, or who are going to take their products as customers of what the team is producing. So all of those are important things to think about when staffing teams and thinking about the network connections that people have that might avail teams to those important ties outside the team, thinking about how the team is going to coordinate with other teams and other units. So we want to be thinking about that when we form teams. But another way to think about this is, understanding who are these players and when do we need. So Francois, maybe this is our local team here, and we have another team that's similar to us in our subsidiary in France. And so Francois may become a very important boundary spanner or an external role or connection we need to have there. Maybe because of his language skills, he's capable of making connections to that subsidiary better than anybody else in our team. Or Garrett over here, we might say he's got good connections into this team at headquarters because he's super good at presentations and selling ideas. And so he's the person we really want boundary spanning to go out and be an ambassador and kind of sell the ideas of the team, keeping people informed, letting them know what the progress is. So these are some of the different ways that external roles happen. And involve often these boundary spanners, right? People who across these divides, the borders of the team, the borders of the unit, the borders of the organization. So our book, you can review this in the textbook, but basically there are some common external roles that team members play and that should be considered. As a team leader, you should be thinking about, are these activities being conducted by your team? Now, learning from X teams and the idea that teams have phases of sort of opening and closing and opening and closing and loosening and tightening their boundaries, not all these activities or these roles will be played at all times, but they do need to be considered and understood. So for instance, it might be the case that a team needs a buffer, right? They may have struggles if they're constantly being bombarded with new messages. When I'm working with my admissions team to the Masters in Human Resources program, I'm department chair, I have that team. If I'm sort of too often calling up a Zoom meeting to tell them and ask them what's going on, what's the latest today, what happened today, who admitted, who didn't, who enrolled, who didn't, right? What probably needs to happen in that case is someone, probably the team lead, who would be my colleague who's the director of the program, he might need to say, we're not talking to you right now. We are too busy with what we're trying to carry off. So in fact, that's something kind of similar to that happened last week when they needed to deliver the admitted student day completely online with about a week's notice. They had to turn something that was supposed to be in person to an online event. And you need that person to be able to say, you know what, not now, back off, leave us alone. We're in a crucial period. We'll circle back to you in a week and give you the answers to your questions. Similarly, sometimes a gatekeeper might be the same way to prevent what could be, sort of discouraging information coming from the team at the wrong time. We need to think about lobbyists. This is like if you think about the scouting activity or the ambassador activity, who needs to be lobbied in favor of what the team is doing. So, if I have that team working on admissions, and they believe that they can land a couple more students if they can get some more scholarship dollars, well, then they might need to lobby me to ask if I have some more resources to give them. But they need to be prepared with the kind of influential arguments, so I support that, right? So again, all of these should be considered and are just as vital as thinking about internal roles in a team for ultimate team effectiveness. So if we think about, what we're doing with these roles, I think, point one is when you're staffing, I've already mentioned this, that you want to think about, do the people you have on your team have the skill sets, the interpersonal skills, the network connections, the social capital to be able to perform these kinds of external roles? Do you have the right people in place to do that so that the team gets net gained from their external activities? And ultimately, we talk about coaching and a leader's role, particularly in innovative, knowledge working, dynamic teams that we have in a lot of our organizations, should not be a micromanaging directive leader. So the team lead in this case should be understanding when some of these external boundary loosenings need to happen, and should be coaching individuals to engage in these kinds of behaviors to benefit the team. So these are some ways to be thinking about this, whether you're a team member or a team leader. How do you address this idea of external roles, and what should you be considering as important roles for team members?